Relapse, rest, and reflection. That is a subject matter for today's video. With relapse, I specifically mean related to depression. Feeling as if you're on a trajectory and then you have a step backwards. Rest and reflection, I think, are obvious, but I want to talk about them in their entirety to show the importance of rest and reflection and why feeling as if you're taking a step backwards might not always be the worst thing. If that sounds interesting, then stick around. I'm Taylor, the Sheepish Goat, and you're watching the channel. All right. So let's start with relapse. I am a person who suffers from depression. Generally speaking, I'm doing pretty good right now, so thank you for asking. But I've formulated a sense of stability through my self-help practices. In therapy, we've referred to them as CJs, creative joy, ways in which I can show up for myself and do things that make me happy. But I'm going to give you an example of recent time in which I, quote unquote, relapsed, in which I lost the sense of stability that I had and I felt like my depression was increasing. I should start here. I make videos on YouTube. Hi there. In the past, I struggled to find the energy to continue to make uploads on a regular basis to meet that deadline schedule of every week, get a video up. It's what you're supposed to do. I've done it. I ran through that gambit. It didn't feel attainable, and the videos that I was making felt misaligned with me. They didn't feel like I could stand behind them or I really cared about them. In some capacity, I was just chasing the idea of keeping up with that. So I stopped doing that. Lately, if you've watched my channel at all, or if you go and look at my history, I've been uploading very regularly every single week, aside from a couple weeks ago. That was deliberate. But the way in which I'm creating now is coming from the right point of view, I suppose, just to iterate that point. Uploading now is a point in which I feel creatively energized by the things that I'm doing, and I feel a sense of satisfaction from my videos, right? I'm creating from a point of authenticity. But a couple weeks ago, to the point is, I broke from those routines. I broke from those patterns that have provided me stability. I didn't keep up with my CJs. But why did I do that? So I had a Friday off a couple weeks ago. And when I had that Friday off, I was like, oh, I'll go to the zoo. That sounds fun. I went with my friend. I had a good time. Generally speaking, one of my CJs is to go hiking. I go every single week on Saturday. I hike at a new park, and then I usually come home and I'll make a video on Saturday. But that's kind of like my weekend routine. Well, I went to the zoo, and I was like, oh, I'm pretty satisfied with that. That felt like a good use of that time. It served sort of the point of going on a hike, if you will, getting out in nature, experiencing something. But because I did that, I had the awareness, which is always a curse, but I had the awareness of, I don't really need to do that. Maybe I'll just take a break, right? I had already thought before that point that maybe I won't make a video this week. I was like, I don't really know if I have anything to say. I don't know what topic I want to do. I don't want to chase the idea of having to upload every week, right? So I was like, I think I'll take a break. So I took a break from making a video. I took a break from hiking, and I felt okay about it. And I was like, okay, let's see what happens. Part of me was fearful. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I have the awareness of routines are in place to, in some capacity, distract you, right? Not like in a, I don't know, malicious way is probably not the right terminology, but in a way to keep you on track and to keep you focused so your mind isn't wandering. But I have enough awareness to realize that, right? I know that it's not just like, I'm doing these just because they make me happy. There is a methodology to it. So I thought about it and I was like, well, this might turn out badly, but let's see, because I don't want to chase the idea of an upload schedule. And I don't want to be confined to my routines, right? I want my routines to help me. I don't want my routines to be this thing that I stick to so tightly that when I break from them, I break. So I took a break. And in taking a break, Saturday I felt okay. I felt a little uncertain. I'm like, Okay. I don't really know what to do with my time. Maybe I'll watch TV. Sunday came around. I felt more off. I felt a little uncertain. And because I hadn't been keeping up with the two main patterns that I had more free time, right? Like if I record on Saturday, Sunday, I'll edit my video, but I didn't have to do that. So I had even more free time that I didn't know what to do with. And since I had resigned myself to taking a break from my CJs, from my routines, I thought, okay, maybe I'll just kind of have this weekend to relax. So I didn't really keep up with many of my patterns. So I really didn't go for a walk like I normally do, because I'll go for a walk almost every single day. I really didn't meditate, which I do every single day to help ground me and center myself. And I may have written in my gratitude journal, but I'm not really sure. I can't recall because it's been a few weeks. I don't think I did. The point is I started feeling a separation from myself, and I started feeling weird. I started feeling like I wasn't connected with myself internally, which for me, the grounding, all the routines is the whole point of that. It gets me within myself. It gets me out of my head. But because I wasn't in myself, all I was in my head. And what I started doing was spiraling. I started thinking about everything that I lacked, everything I didn't have. Not even just in relation to I wasn't doing these routines, but because I wasn't doing these routines, I started thinking about everything else I didn't have, the relationships I didn't have, where I wasn't at in regards to YouTube, where I wasn't at in regards to my job, everything that I was afraid of. It all started coming into my head. So Sunday I started feeling worse. And Monday hit, and Monday I felt terrible. So in my therapy, we rate my depression every week. And as a scale for you, generally now, I hover around a 1 or a 2 on the scale of depression. That's kind of where I'm at. It's very stable. This is dark, but the end of the scale, the 10, is death. That's death. That's not existing anymore. I've never been at 10. Perhaps you can tell. I'm still talking to you right now. But in the past, I would get to an 8. And the 8 was very dark, and the 8 was very terrible feeling. But I never got past an 8. So when I started going to therapy, my depression would oscillate a lot. And every week it would be up and down and all over the place. It didn't feel like I had consistency. But in going to therapy and doing these CJs, my depression regulated and then slowly came down. And then sometimes it would come up a little bit, but generally it would come back down. And it's been holding low. So during this week, my depression before Friday, or even on Friday, was feeling really great. It was feeling like a 1. You know, it had rained that week, and for me, one thing I love is rain. I love feeling like a child and being able to express that just playfulness, that joy. So when it rains, like I said, I walk every day. So I love going out and walking in the rain. And when I'm walking in the rain, sometimes it's raining so heavy that I'll just go run. I'll start running in the rain and it feels amazing. And I'll hit the trees and I'll have the water hit me and I'll kick the puzzle and I'll stomp around and I'll be singing the music and I'll have a really great time. And it's so freeing and it's so beautifully simplistic in its joy, right? I feel like I'm 5 again. And I had that week. That was the first week that I did that. So I had an amazing week and I went to the zoo and I was doing great. But then I broke my routines. So I was holding it about a 2. And then Monday hit. And Monday I was up to a 3. First thing I woke up in the morning, I could feel the difference in my energy. And then throughout the day, it rose to a 4. Because I was so focused on all this other things I was missing, I was aware that my depression was rising, right? I have that self-awareness. I could feel my anxiety increasing. I could feel me only being able to focus on everything I didn't have. And I was afraid that I was going to go to a 5. So I was fearful of what could happen, which made my anxiety increase more. And through all of this, I was hyper aware that I wasn't connecting with myself. I couldn't get back in. I could see myself, and it felt like there was this bubble around me, and I was outside, like trying to get in, and I couldn't get through the bubble. I couldn't connect with myself. It was a very disassociating, but a very uncomfortable and scary feeling, right? You feel your anxiety increasing, you feel your depression increasing, and you don't really know how to get back into your body. So what did I do? Well, first off, I was watching a bunch of stuff, right? I wasn't keeping up with my routines. I was listening to things, I was listening to music, but in some capacity, all that noise begins to feel cacophonous, right? Like music can be soothing, but music, even in itself, like if I go for a walk and I listen to music, sometimes that noise just bounces around in my head and I can't take a second for my mind to settle because it's too distracting. So I decided Monday, I woke up, I felt terrible. I was like, fuck this. I'm totally disconnecting from all social media. I didn't listen to anything. I didn't watch anything. I was like, today I am just trying to get back into my body. So I went for a walk. I meditated. I wrote in my gratitude journal. I sat with my thoughts. Throughout all this time, I was trying to think of things, even before my depression increased, about other ways to better utilize my time so I don't fall into the pattern of detaching and watching things and being on social media. So I'd already been trying to think of something to help fill some of the time. And I realized I was like, I might want to read. I really like philosophy, the idea of it, the expansion of the mind and like deeper thoughts. That's not evident by how I talk, but I've been wanting to do that. And I was like, I feel like I want to read something. I don't know what. So I was in this state on Monday and I was like, what the fuck do I do? And I went and I sat I have a spot where I meditate. So I would go to the spot where I meditate. I never sit there unless I'm meditating. And I'm sitting and I sit down like, man, I really wish like I had something to like, I don't know, expand my mind that I could focus on that like, would give me like something to like think about deeper to help me figure out my life. And I'm sitting there and I look over and I have this fucking intro to philosophy series. It's a 4-volume series that's literally sitting right there next to me. And I had started it before therapy, but I stopped reading it for some reason. I just stopped, I think in my last job because I felt stressed out. And I look over and it's just like sitting there looking at me like, really? Do you have to ask the question, moron? I'm like, all right, you didn't have to like put it so obviously in my face, but sure. So I did all these routines and patterns and I started reading this book. And in doing all of this, it helped me ground within myself and it helped me reconnect with what I felt inside and who I actually am, as opposed to all the thoughts and all the fears and everything running through my brain. So Tuesday comes around, and as soon as I wake up Tuesday, I'm immediately back to it too. I had the best sleep I had in a week that Monday into Tuesday, and as soon as I woke up, my energy was completely back to normal. Now, in some capacity, I knew that I could do that because I've had experiences through therapy where I've hit a hard topic. It's overwhelming. I sit with it. I think about why I feel that way, and as soon as I figure out, I'm able to process that feeling. So I knew I could do it, but it felt scary when all of that anxiety and all of that fear was bubbling up and it's starting to take over your brain. So to be able to hit that wall, hit that fear, and be able to move through it was extremely validating, of course. But what it really did for me was it not only stressed the importance of rest and relaxation, but it showed me how superficial patterns and routines can be. Now, patterns and routines, like I said, are fantastic. They do help focus you. They do help keep you on track. But being a slave to those patterns, being restricted to I can only do this, or here's my schedule every single day, in and of itself is a confinement. Even in and of itself is not a real sense of self. It's you're living into a pattern. So breaking from those is important because it doesn't need to be your identity. It needs to be a facet of who you are, right? Like I might have a list of 20 things. I don't have to do every single one every day, but every day I'm allowed to be different, and every day I'm allowed to choose what feels right for me. How do I move through this? What feels like the best opportunity to have an authentic experience today? So that was the relapse. But let's talk more over about the rest and reflection, because through this process, I learned a lot. As I said, I wanted to rest in some capacity because I didn't have a video that I wanted to make. I didn't really know a topic. I didn't really have a clear idea of what to say. So that in and of itself felt conflicting, right? As I said, I made videos where I had to rush out ideas. I had to run and do everything. So being able to say, I don't have to rush this in and of itself is important. I think When we care about something, there's this overwhelming sense in the world around us that if you like it, you better go after it. Nothing's going to come to you easy. Nothing's going to happen unless you make it happen. That's not true. Yes, you need to put out there what you want. Yes, you need to go after the things that you want, but that doesn't require constant effort. Passivity, being passive, is important. Letting the world play around you is important, right? It doesn't matter how fast you're running. If the plane doesn't leave until 10, you can't leave until 10, right? When we think about sports, when we think about anything in life, it all requires moments of pause, right? NASCAR, you have to go and hit the pit crew. You got to change out your tires. You got to refuel up. When you're fishing, you're casting a line, but you're not just casting a line every second. You cast a line and you sit and you wait. Everything in life requires a moment of rest because everything in life happens at its own pace and time. We cannot rush things to happen. We have to have action. We have to have intention. We have to put ourselves in a state in which things can happen, but we can't control everything that happens. Sometimes things just happen and we are ready for them if we are ready. So, through allowing myself to rest, I had this experience. And in having this experience, it helped me do a lot of things. Like I said, I read my philosophy book, which I hadn't read and I had been wanting to read and I just had been putting it off. I read that book and it really expanded my mind. And I've been coming back to it, I've been reading, and it's been extremely helpful in giving me new ideas and perspective, realigning with myself and different mental thoughts that allow me to reevaluate the world around me, which is extremely important for me as a person. I made a video very recently about perception, apperception, schema, and introspection. That was inspired by that reading. And every video I've made in the last couple weeks has been directly inspired by the events of that last relapse period. When I was looking to reconnect with myself, when I was looking to find a sense of self and get out of my brain, one of the things that I did was I drew. And I drew for the first time in 8 months because drawing for me had been conflicting. In the past, I had put my identity into drawing. This channel started as an art channel. But I've learned through time that drawing was a way in which I process feeling. And making videos directly about art can be very conflicting for me. It doesn't mean I can't do something that's artistic, but like a drawing of itself, forcing a drawing out for the sake of a video is wrong. And I knew that, so I stopped making drawing videos. But to the same point, I learned that drawing was a mental process, right? It was a way for me to sit with my feelings. So I used it for that purpose. I drew a person. This was in my last video, in my Do You Find Self-Awareness Exhausting, which focused on perfectionism to some extent. I drew a photo, and the intention of drawing the photo was to feel, to elicit the feelings that I have, and that's what it did. So that drawing was extremely healing and processing, helped me process a lot of feelings. And I used that in my last video as a segment of the video, but not as the goal of the video. Relapsing can be very difficult. Relapsing can feel overwhelming when you feel like you're on a trajectory and then all of a sudden you hit this backstep, you hit this unexpected thing, or maybe expected. I sort of challenged myself in some capacity. But it doesn't mean that it always works that way. Sometimes things just happen in the world around us, as I said. It doesn't mean it's bad. It can be bad, but the way in which we choose to interact with the problems, with the struggles, is the most important thing. It doesn't mean that it can't impact us. In fact, it should impact us because the reflection afterwards is what truly allows us to grow and what truly allows the important moments to happen. It doesn't mean that everything has to have a meaning. It doesn't mean that. In fact, that can be, to some extent, overly toxic in the form of positivity. But that doesn't mean that there is no point to anything either. Life is extremely complicated. And in reality, as long as we're giving ourselves time to properly rest, to sit with the terrible things that do happen to us and allow ourselves to feel those, right? We don't have to lock those things away. We don't have to pretend they don't happen. They did happen. They do happen. Life sucks sometimes, but life is beautiful too. And if we're taking the time to figure that out, if we're taking the time to have a fucking relapse, we're taking the time to rest, and we're taking the time to reflect, we can process those things, and we can move through them, and we can find moments of clarity and joy, and we can find moments of expansion. So, that's the video we're making today. That was a long ramble, but I hope you find it interesting. I sure did. And as I said, I grew a lot from this past experience. I grew a lot from feeling terrible, because feeling terrible isn't the end. For me, feeling terrible is the beginning. And I hope it feels that way for you too. So until next time, everybody. See you then. Love you. Bye. This is a test. How does my lighting look? I like being this high now. Look at me in my taller chair. Why I never brought this out here before is completely beyond me. Okay, that should be enough.